Over the last couple of years, OM System has developed a super telephoto lens portfolio that is nothing short of amazing. Not only are there options for every budget, but also for every type of photographer. Whether you are looking for the best or the lightest super telephoto lens for micro four thirds, or something in between, well, OM System has you covered. But with so many excellent options available, it can be quite difficult to make a buying decision. My name is Thomas Eisl. I'm a professional photographer from Vienna, Austria. In this video, I'm going to dissect OM System's formidable range of M.Zuiko super telephoto lenses. By examining every aspect including optical performance, reach, image stabilization, weather sealing and much more, I'll do my best to help you choose the right lens for your work. Before I start, let me define what a super telephoto lens is. First and foremost, it is important to note that there is no universal definition. Personally, I very much like the threshold defined in Eastman Kodak's Professional Photo Guide published in 1998. In fact, I'm inclined to apply an even stricter criteria than Kodak did, which is as follows. In order to qualify as a super telephoto lens, the camera-lens combination has to image a diagonal angle of view of not more than 4.1 degrees. In other words, the lens has to have a focal length of at least 300 mm on a micro four thirds camera or 600 mm on a 35 mm camera. This excludes the vast majority of long telephoto lenses and leaves the field to the true ultra-long specialists, making this in-depth comparison more meaningful for the demanding wildlife and sports photographer. Such ultra-long lenses ensure a reasonable working distance even when photographing relatively small subjects. Now, without further ado, let's get to the comparison. The following graph will serve as the basis for today's presentation. Its x-axis represents the focal length in millimeters. The y-axis is meant to represent optical performance. This metric is a combination of a wide variety of factors, including resolving power, prevalence of longitudinal and lateral chromatic aberrations, other optical aberrations, as well as uncorrected distortion. Before I place the current M.Zuiko lenses on this grid, it is very important to emphasize that all of these lenses are good, but there has to be one on the lower end of the y-axis. Personally, I'm perfectly comfortable with using every single one of them for my photography. In fact, I do exactly that. Nonetheless, it would not be very helpful to state that they are all just fine, and also it would be a bit unfair. Why? Because some of them are among the optically best lenses ever built, while others prioritize compactness and cost efficiency, which in turn requires compromises when it comes to raw optical performance. So let's place all contestants on the chart and take a closer look. Starting at the lower end in terms of focal length, we have the M.Zuiko 300 Pro and the M.Zuiko 75-300. In the middle sits the M.Zuiko 100-400, and while at first glance it is as long as the M.Zuiko 150-400 Pro, the latter features a built-in 1.25 times teleconverter which extends the maximum focal length to 500 mm. The longest super telephoto lens in the M.Zuiko lineup is of course the new M.Zuiko 150-600. Let's direct our attention towards the optical performance of the contestants. The two optically best performing lenses are without any question the M.Zuiko 300 Pro and the M.Zuiko 150-400 Pro. They best all other lenses on this chart in practically every aspect. I'd say this is the perfect opportunity to highlight how good these two lenses actually are. They are, without a doubt, two of the best super telephoto lenses ever made, regardless of manufacturer and sensor format. When it comes to optical corrections, they are near perfect apochromats, and any other manufacturer would most definitely assign the label Apo to these high-performance lenses. So why do they not bear this label? Because traditionally Olympus and now OM system only applies this label to full apochromats. Be that as it may, even at the widest aperture settings of f4 and f4.5 respectively, the 300 Pro and the 150-400 Pro reach almost peak performance. Aberrations are practically non-existent, even wide open, and their spectacular resolving power allows extensive cropping without significantly limiting print size. These two super telephoto lenses are reason enough to own a Micro Four Thirds camera. They are truly that good. Not far behind these two gems is the brand new 150-600. With less resolving power, but also very well controlled chromatic aberrations, this achromatic lens combines excellent optical performance with immense reach at a very attractive price tag. Much like the two Pro lenses, the 150-600 reaches peak resolving power when stopped down only slightly. However, the 150-600 has a maximum aperture of f5 to f6.3 compared to f4 and f4.5 of the two Pro lenses. So this is actually the important difference in practice. The two Pro lenses reach their best performance at a brighter aperture than the 150-600, which, regardless of set focal length, has to be stopped down to f8 to give you peak performance. So these three lenses are the top performers, but the next one on the chart comes very close. It is the formidable M.Zuiko 100-400 f5 to f6.3. The optical design constitutes a compromise between size and image quality, and if an image is framed properly so that cropping is not necessary, the results from this lens are hard to distinguish from images taken with the previously mentioned trio. Thanks to its reach at the long end, the next lens also deserves the title Super Telephoto. It is the well-renowned M.Zuiko 75-300 f4.8 to f6.7. Designed with portability in mind, optically the 75-300 cannot match the other super telephoto lenses. Be that as it may, as I said before, there is no bad lens on this chart, and the 75-300 is able to capture stunning images with sufficient detail and fidelity. As long as no crop is applied, normal prints and posts on social media are no issue at all with this almost pocketable zoom lens. It is truly the ultimate good enough lens and offers a lot of optical performance for very little money. Now that you have an idea how these lenses rank in terms of optical performance, it is time for an in-depth analysis of their reach. When it comes to wildlife photography, more often than not, reach is a critical factor that directly impacts image quality. Let me elaborate. Nothing deteriorates image quality faster than cropping. To generalize, an uncropped image taken with an inferior lens almost always beats a cropped image captured with a superior lens. Therefore, having the perfect focal length at your disposal for the given job is just crucial. So circling back to the comparison, it is obvious which lens is the longest and which one is the shortest, even at a glance. However, the devil is in the details in the form of the MC20 and MC14 teleconverters. Using a teleconverter gives you more reach, but also degrades the image quality. So what does this mean in practice? Well, let's bring up the chart. First and foremost, the M.Zuiko 75-300 does not take a teleconverter. It is truly the shortest super telephoto on this chart. While the M.Zuiko 100-400 is compatible with both the MC14 and the MC20, adding those will reduce the image quality of this achromat. So, depending on output size, you can notice a difference compared to the three higher-end lenses. Does this mean that you should not use a teleconverter with the 100-400? Well, no, not at all, as using a teleconverter still gives you far better results than cropping to get closer. The achromatically corrected M.Zuiko 150-600 is also compatible with both teleconverters, and the situation in terms of image quality is quite similar. You probably noticed by now that I emphasized the word achromat twice when talking about the 100-400 and the 150-600. It is indeed the key word here. When I talked to Leica's head of optics engineering department Peter Kabe a while ago, he emphasized that one of the main advantages of an apochromatic lens is that you can use a teleconverter and still get outstanding image quality. And I could not agree more with his statement. The two near perfectly apochromatic Super Telephoto Pro lenses are destined to be used with the MC14 or the MC20. I do so without hesitation all the time. Now let me add another important yet often overlooked aspect when it comes to teleconverters. The MC14 reduces the effective light gathering by 1 stop and the MC20 by 2 stops. Taking this into account, the 100-400 and the 150-600 can get quite dim, especially as these lenses have to be stopped down to achieve best performance. While you can get away with using them wide open without the teleconverter attached, you definitely want to stop them down to the ideal aperture when using them with a teleconverter to ensure good image quality. In case of the 150-600, this means f8, which becomes f11 with the MC14 and f16 with the MC20. That can be quite dim, especially if you want to capture moving subjects under dark conditions. Also keep in mind that f8 is the magical threshold for optimal AF performance with the OM1 Mark I and Mark II. Below that, OM system does not guarantee peak AF reliability in the SH2 drive modes. So looks like it is no coincidence that the new 150-600 achieves peak performance at f8, right? Well, in any case, let me put it like that. As the Pro lenses deliver better performance at wider apertures, the teleconverter penalty is far less significant. With all that being said, let's address a commonly asked question. In order to achieve a focal length of 600 mm, is it better to use a Pro lens paired with a teleconverter or to use the 150-600 without a teleconverter? Before I answer this question, a very important statement. This decision is not really about image quality, even though there is a measurable difference under lab conditions. But this is really not the decisive factor in my opinion. Instead, I approach this question completely differently. Allow me to give you 3 recommendations to come to a decision. Number 1. If you own or plan to purchase either the 300 Pro or the 150-400 Pro and you need more reach, you should definitely get a teleconverter. As I've said before, you do not have to worry about image quality when combining a near apochromat with a teleconverter. Number 2. If you want 600 mm, but option number 1 is off the tables because of financial considerations, then you should get the 150-600 instead. And last but not least, number 3, if you own a 300 Pro and you would like to add the flexibility and reach of a Super Telephoto zoom, but don't want to get a 150 to 400 Pro for whatever reason, then you should also get the 150 to 600 without having second thoughts. It really is as simple as that. Well, almost at least. Of course, there is also the option to combine the 100 to 400 with a teleconverter, but optically this is just not on par with the other options I just outlined. An often overlooked yet very important parameter is the maximum magnification a lens can achieve. Especially when photographing small wildlife, having a high enough magnification can make or break a shot. So here on this slide you can see the maximum magnification each lens is able to achieve at one glance. Just to note, I'm always referring to 35mm equivalent magnification, as this is the universally used reference value. The M.Zuiko 75-300 fares relatively poorly in this comparison, although a factor of 0.36 is still an excellent value for a Super Telephoto lens, especially when compared to what is available in other sensor formats. The 300 Pro and the M.Zuiko 100-400 are roughly in the same ballpark. Note that adding a teleconverter increases the maximum magnification by the same factor the focal length is extended. This means that both lenses are capable of roughly a 1:1 magnification, which makes them macro lenses by definition. Note that the M.Zuiko 100-400 reaches maximum magnification at the long end. Converting that to the 35mm format, this means that with the MC20 attached, you get a 1600mm macro lens with a magnification of 1.14. Pretty incredible, I'd say. So the focal length at which the maximum magnification is obtained is very important for practical applications. This becomes very apparent when examining the remaining two Super Telephoto lenses on the chart. Both achieve roughly the same magnification factors of 0.71 and 0.7. Sounds pretty similar, but actually both lenses behave very differently when it comes to close-up work. The M.Zuiko 150-600 has to be set to 150mm to achieve maximum magnification, while the M.Zuiko 150-400 Pro does so at 500mm. This of course requires engaging the built-in 1.25 times teleconverter. As a result, the 150-600 on the one hand is more suitable for close-up work, which requires shorter working distances, and the 150-400 Pro on the other hand is better for achieving high magnifications at longer distances. Keep that in mind when making a purchase decision. It really depends on the intended use case, which one is better for you. So before moving on to the next chapter, I'd like to emphasize how incredible the close-up capabilities of the M.Zuiko telephoto lenses truly are. With the exception of the 75-300, a specialized macro telephoto lens can be left home most of the time, especially if you are willing to add a teleconverter to the setup. High-end OM system Micro Four Thirds cameras like the OM1 Mark II on the table here are known for their incredible image stabilization. However, Super Telephoto photography can challenge even their industry-leading capabilities to the point where an in-lens image stabilization system becomes necessary. The basic rule is that the longer a lens in terms of focal length, the better it is to have in-lens stabilization. So when deciding which one of these lenses to get, lens image stabilization is therefore just as important as all the other aspects. So let us take a closer look. When designing the M.Zuiko 75-300, OM system decided to omit any optical image stabilization system to ensure compactness above anything else. As the lens is on average a bit shorter than the other entries, this is not as bad in practice as it might sound, but should be kept in mind nonetheless. Moving on to the M.Zuiko 100-400, we are looking at the lens which is able to provide 3 stops of image stabilization in total. A very respectable value for a long telephoto lens and sufficient, especially when no teleconverter is attached. The remaining 3 lenses offer what is called Sync-IS, which is OM System's designation for their specialized stabilization protocol. The camera's in-body image stabilization and the lens's image stabilization work together to achieve unparalleled performance. Examining the M.Zuiko 150-600 and the 150-400 Pro and the 300 Pro, we have to take the values with a grain of salt when we want to compare them. Meaning that the 2 Pro lenses are even better than what the values suggest. Here is why. The given values were obtained using different camera models, sometimes older models. So mounted on an OM1 Mark II, the Pro lenses would perform even better than stated here. The 7 stops of the 150-600 were obtained with an OM1 at 600 mm. So this metric is pretty much what you get with a modern OM system camera. At the end of the day, the slight differences in terms of image stabilization performance between the last 3 lenses are almost negligible in practice. All of them are basically as good as it gets. Super telephoto lenses are intended for outdoor photography, so protection against the elements is an important factor when making a purchase decision. Some of the M.Zuiko telephoto lenses have an IP certification, some don't, even though they are protected against dust and moisture. So things are not so straightforward, which is why I'd like to give you a well-founded assessment of the various lenses' abilities to withstand adverse weather conditions. Starting once again with the M.Zuiko 75-300, we have a lens that does not have any weather sealing at all. This does not mean that it falls apart the moment a water drop hits it, but that extra care has to be taken, especially when working in dusty environments. Best practices include keeping the lens barrel clean and zooming slowly. Both measures ensure that no unwanted particles end up inside the optical system of the lens. The M.Zuiko 100-400 and the M.Zuiko 150-600 are sealed against dust and moisture. Note that even though the 150-600 has a certification of IPX1 and the 100-400 has no certification, they are almost on par when it comes to weather sealing. Hence, they both get one water drop symbol. Unsurprisingly, once again, the 2 Pro lenses occupy the top spot, boasting a rating of IP53. They are basically able to withstand everything you throw at them and come out unscathed. They are also the only 2 lenses on this chart without extending barrels, and that of course also contributes to their overall durability. Bottom line, in terms of ingress protection, you get what you pay for. To compare size and weight of the M.Zuiko Super Teles, I've modified the graph a bit. As my goal is to give you an idea regarding their portability, the length indicated on the y-axis was measured with the lens barrels retracted and with no lens hoods attached or extended. The nonlinear x-axis indicates weight with removable tripod collars attached, but with no lens hoods if removable. So let's start with the longest and heaviest lenses. The longest lens is the 150-400 Pro with 314.3 mm. Thanks to high-end materials, the lens weighs only 1,875 grams. This is really impressive, especially when considering that it is optically perfect. Nonetheless, we should not forget that it is the second heaviest lens on this chart. The heaviest is the 150-600, which weighs 2,065 grams, so about 200 grams more. That is not a lot, but still. Set to 150 mm, the 150-600 is only 264.4 mm long, which is a bit less than the 150-400 Pro. So regardless of which one of the two top performing zooms you carry, you have to expect about 2 kilograms. Exactly 400 grams lighter with the tripod collar attached, the optically flawless 300 Pro is the first entry in the medium weight category. The 100-400 is a bit lighter with 1,120 grams. In terms of length, both the 300 Pro and the 100-400 are very similar. It is a fair estimate that both lenses weigh around 1.2 kilograms. Why? Because you can make the 300 Pro 205 grams lighter by simply removing the tripod collar. And for the 100-400, you most definitely want to bring the lens hood, which adds a few grams. Overall, the field up here is very cramped, but there is a clear champion when it comes to size and weight. The 75-300 weighs only 423 grams and is approximately half as long as the 100-400. This is absolutely incredible and never ceases to amaze me, to be honest. Also note that even though I used words like heavy and long, it is important to keep in mind that when taking angle of view into account, all of these lenses are small and light compared to similar lenses on other sensor formats. At this point, you probably already know which lens you need for your work. If not, maybe the following perspective on the current OM system Super Telephoto lineup will help you to make a decision. If size, weight and budget are of concern, there are two lenses I can wholeheartedly recommend. The 75-300 gives you ultimate portability at an unbeatable price. It is perfect for your weekend stroll or your next vacation, or really every time when Super Telephoto photography is not necessarily the main focus but cannot be ruled out. Well, then put the 75-300 in your bag. You won't regret that. With a higher budget and a bigger camera bag, I can think of no reason why you would not love the 100-400. It gives you the flexibility of a zoom, the option of increasing the reach with a teleconverter and protection against the elements. Truly a great lens to own and a future-proof investment. If you want to unleash the full potential of your Micro Four Thirds setup, then there is no way around one of the two Pro lenses. At first glance, the Pro lenses seem to be expensive, but that is not true at all. These marvels of engineering represent the pinnacle of optical design, boast uncompromising build quality, and deliver consistent high-end performance. So for what they are, they cost practically nothing. Last but definitely not least, there is the M.Zuiko 150-600. It costs less money than the 150-400 Pro, nonetheless, it sets a very high standard in terms of Super Telephoto imaging performance. With outstanding reach, weather sealing, and impressive image stabilization, the 150-600 is nothing short of impressive and a great choice. If you have this lens, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you want to know more about it, watch my in-depth review after this video has ended. Thank you very much for watching. I hope I was able to help you to make a decision by providing this in-depth analysis. For sample images captured with these lenses, follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Please consider not only subscribing to the channel, but also becoming a channel member to support my work. It allows me to continue making content like this video, and as a special bonus, you get access to exclusive videos and much more. So thanks again and see you next time.